In this session, we'll be talking about what is a beingful organization. And before I describe that, or we have a conversation on it, I want to describe this framework that I use, which is at 4 levels of leadership. Level 0 is all about the context and the conditions in which organizations thrive or perish. And the context includes technologies like artificial intelligence and other digital technologies. It includes climate change, the loss of biodiversity, all these factors at the contextual level that determine how successful the organization is. Level 1 is all about mindsets and the sense of self. And I've talked about this before. Your sense of self is critical to your understanding of beingfulness. Level 2 is all about teams and processes and the subgroup culture, the culture of the subgroup. But level 3 is what we'll be talking about now, and that is about the organization itself. So at the organizational level, we'll try and understand what is a beingful organization. And it's a concept that's new to both practice and to academia. So I'm joined by my colleague and fellow researcher, Pavitra, and we're going to discuss what is a beingful organization.
Right.
And we can also discuss beingful culture at the organizational level as part of this. And so let me ask Pavitra, just to illustrate what it is not, can you describe an organization that you may have been in or your friends have been in that was just toxic, that was really as far away from beingfulness as possible? What was it like to be in that place? What is the woof and warp of that place, as you call it?
I think one of the major things is that we didn't know what we were all working towards as a group or as a team of people or as an organization. It felt very much like the organization only cared about the numbers that we were getting or the outcomes or how much we were adding to them. And each one of us was repeatedly made to feel like we were replaceable, which I guess is true. But we don't have to feel that on an everyday basis. Yes, and then we don't need to everyday prove that we deserve that place. These were some of the major things. But more than anything, I don't think there was a concept of culture, work culture, or an organizational culture at all. There were no activities to unify us or bring us together where we could just exchange ideas or fun things or do something that's other than work. And also a lot of distance between the leadership and the teams. We didn't know what they were thinking half the time, and it was communicated to us through impersonal emails as notices. Yes, so I think these kinds of things.
They wouldn't tell you directly?
No, there was no place where we could ask a question or say, oh, why is it like that? Like these town halls, there weren't any of those settings. So it was more unidirectional. This is how it's going to be going forward.
That's it, do it.
Yes. Let's get it done. So that was some of the things that we had.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of organizations like this, right?
Yes.
They may not be as terrible, but many organizations are typically this kind of looking at people as just numbers. There's no clear purpose for the organization. Nothing that inspires you. A lot of these kind of impersonal, unidirectional, as you were saying, ways to communicate. Really, at some fundamental level, you're not treated as human beings.
You're
just
a resource.
You're just a resource.
That could be easily replaced. You
know, that distinction is made between resource and source. I think that's what it is. You're not a source of ideas, but just a resource to be used as you want here. Right? So that's not a beingful organization. And we can almost reverse everything, and that will tell you what a beingful organization is. Let's imagine that. You picked up, for example, you were treated as just a resource, and let's say the reverse is you were treated as a human being. In which case you're consulted, in which case your inputs are really taken seriously.
You're cared
respected, you're cared for.
Right.
What would it be? What would be the other side of everything?
Just some kind of empathy, understanding where the other person's coming from, their context, their limitations probably, and then trying to see if they can enable growth or learning within that individual. More personalized one-on-one than an impersonal level.
Recognizing that you have these needs that might differ from the other person.
Yes, and to give that opportunity to someone to fill that gap that they might have instead of punishing them for having that gap at all. So that, I think, those are some of the things. The other thing is talking about their mission statements in more concrete terms than just a high level, this is who we hope to be, we hope to make leaders of the future type of things. Something that is more translatable.
While,
yes, exactly. And we don't know how that's translating at all. Something more applicable.
That's a very important point, because many companies have a vision and a mission and all that purpose. But it's just a statement. There's no life behind it. There are no examples behind it. So you would say making it much more tangible. These are the people and their lives we will change.
And giving us cases of that becoming true. Whether it is at the leadership level or something, which makes us believe that this company really cares about this. To see success stories, people thrive in these
So in a way, that higher purpose is a true purpose. That is not just this naam ke vaste purpose.
No, not just a statement.
And how about the interaction between leadership and employees? What would be the reverse of what you experienced?
I think the reverse would be a safe space which is honest, humble, and really it's like two equals just placed at different levels, talking to each other. Something like that, I would imagine.
That's a very interesting point. That's all said and done, you're equal. You're equal because you're two human beings. It just happened that one is at a different level. And the level does not matter.
And recognizing the interdependence. It's not that every employee needs a leader more than the leader needs the employee, or it's not the other way around. It is that both need each other equally.
Need each other. That's very true. That to succeed, you need to be in together.
You need to have, you need to
it's
be
not that
together.
Employees are dispensable. You made the point that, in a toxic, unbeingful, or a beingless, or a being zero organization, employees are just dispensable, right? They would, very interesting, So in some ways, this reminds me of, I do some work on what's called the team production model. And it's a way to manage organizations. And the traditional way to govern organizations is to think of only one stakeholder matters, and that's the shareholder. Everyone else is working towards the shareholder. All working towards growing the market value. And that's where these kinds of practices come in. Employees are dispensable. Everyone's dispensable. Ultimately, it's only shareholder returns that matter. But the opposite of that is the stakeholder model. And within the stakeholder perspective, employees are important. Low-wage workers are important. That, if you look at the crisis, who are the ones who stood in their jobs? The ones who made business succeed, to really stay in business. It's the low-wage employees. The low-wage workers. And they have not been given a fair shake by organizations. They've been treated as dispensable, not even stakeholders. Dispensable pieces that you could move here and there. And so yes, the team production model sees an organization as a team of stakeholders. And what we discussed in teams matters. Everyone is critical. They're all jointly working together. And you're trying to maximize the welfare of the team as a whole, not just the shareholders. And so for that, you need a sense of shared purpose. And it should be a higher purpose. You need a sense of identity. It should be a higher identity, not just a company that makes profits. That's not motivating. It's a company that makes a difference to society. And it needs a sense of trust, which is, and the work needs to be fulfilling and beingful. So, when we started with beingfulness, there were these three core elements of it: a sense of self, a sense of purpose, and a sense of work. All three are important for a beingful organization. Because the self of the organization is now the whole organization. That it needs to be an inclusive self. You've mentioned before that inclusiveness is important. What would be an inclusive organization to you?
I think an organization becomes inclusive when it doesn't constantly highlight the differences between you and everybody else. Whatever the basis of that might be, even if it's gender or any other race or whatever that might be. to be able to treat everyone equally, but recognize that there are different levels of privilege at the same time, being mindful of that. I think that's important. And that is not very easy, I'm sure, to apply. But
because we judge people by what they've accomplished, their status,
how they look. It's a very natural thing to happen. But objectivity needs to come in at that level and not at other levels of interacting with people, which I think we've become better at. We're very objective when it comes to conversation. We don't want to go into the emotional aspects of it. But we don't apply that to people. Don't apply that to people, yes.
We have our biases, right?
Yes.
What are some biases you've seen very commonly? Gender, I guess, is...
Gender has been something that's very big. And also, I think life stage or age. They imagine that at a particular age, you're now going to have bigger responsibilities at home. And so you might not be able to take a good share of the work.
Why should we promote you?
Why should we promote you, or are you sure you can do it? And then it becomes a test of capability. And for that person, they need to put in so much more effort to just prove themselves. And of course, whether it is class or race, I've seen these things happen very commonly. Caste.
Not to mention caste.
Yes. The fact that those conversations even exist in organizations openly, it is tolerated. It is, yes.
I think this is a very important one, to get beyond these divisions and to ensure that these divisions don't matter. That in the end, these are, in the Vedanta terminology, these are nama, rupa. Names and forms, that's it. They don't have any real significance. To get beyond gender, caste, language, religion, and get to the core person. And to see that at the core, they're all the same. Right?
These, all of these factors could be seen as influences on who that person is, but not on their work or how they conduct themselves necessarily.
That's right.
If you want to understand them, you need to understand their context, but not discriminate them based on the context.
These biases.
Based on the context itself.
So their work might be a result of something else. They're not skilled enough.
That opportunity.
I think inclusivity is, in this sense, in this deep sense. The deep sense of peeling away the layers that separate us, right? But, someone could argue this is all idealistic. How could you in a company, is it even possible for managers to go beyond the labels? Have you been in a company that, the team you mentioned, where people could look beyond the labels? Have you seen that?
I don't think that team looked beyond the labels either. I think that's where it failed because there were certain limitations. We had to travel to a slum. And of course, there were going to be risks that a woman would be in or would be exposing herself to because it was an unsafe situation. And so they were held back. A lot of us weren't allowed to go into the field to see it happen while we planned it all out and put it together.
You could not go there.
We couldn't go there because it was unsafe. It was set to be unsafe.
So the women were not allowed to go there?
And then we had a team of field staff where we purposefully hired men so they wouldn't be at risk. And I think it's natural because if there is crime or there is something like that, you would want to protect. But protect at the cost of somebody else's opportunity is different.
Which is what you went there for.
Yes, exactly. So I think it is difficult. Like you said, it is idealistic to imagine that you shouldn't look at labels.
I do some research on identity, social identity, and identity is the hardest to remove. That explains why so many decisions are made by people and the electorate. Why do some people keep winning elections in all over the world, right? Which is against their interest. Why do people keep voting for a party that is against their economic interest? Because of identity. Identity often trumps economic interest. And Trump is an example of identity trumping economic interest, right? So yes, I think this is the hardest nut to crack, I think. In all of, work and organizations, at some level, removing the unwanted, the dangerous, the unhelpful identities is a very difficult work. But it is the heart of beingfulness. Going beyond these surface identities to the core self.
To who the person
to the authentic
is.
self. So that's what a beingful organization is ultimately. That has stripped away the labels and treats people like human beings. And I would add also another element, it goes beyond human beings also, because then if you consider living beings, to recognize that they too have in some sense, the right to coexist with human beings. I think that's the part that doesn't get recognized. We can be often too anthropocentric, is the term, too focused on as human beings, and forget that they're living beings that have been before us. When you read the numbers, when you see the data on the fact that so many mammals are being wiped away because of climate change, and especially biodiversity loss, that it's likely that by the middle of the next century, the largest living mammal, if trends continue, will be the domestic cow.
Right.
That, that is such a cow domesticated by humans becomes the largest living mammal.
Right.
It is truly it is, if there is I hate to use this word, but if there's an original sin, this is the original sin.
Right.
Not to learn to see beyond the names and forms of human beings also.
Right.
And recognize the right to coexist.
Yes. Yes.
But this is the hardest work of all.
Yes.
Yeah, you can convince a man or a woman about other things, but not about identity.
Right.
It's very hard.
Right.
Yeah. So what gives you hope in this? Why do you think it's even possible?
A beingful organization?
Or getting beyond the identity that stifles a beingful organization?
I think that historically we've seen examples of organizations, teams, or any settings failing because they continued to hold that as an important factor. Whether it was based gender discrimination, class, caste,
sexual
race,
orientation,
anything that has focused or discriminated on the basis of this has eventually failed. And I believe that beingful organizations are also sustainable in terms of they can live forever if they become beingful. And they can only do that if they peel away these kinds of, the covering and look beyond.
That's a very good point. That, especially when you see millennials, Gen Z, who are far more inclusive. Inclusive in so many aspects.
Yes.
And as they become more demanding of the organizations they work in, hopefully that's a force.
Right.
That changes these fuddy-duddies in a way, these managing leaders to... Really
or just eliminates those that can't catch up. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, exactly. That they don't succeed because they're not doing well.
Yes.
So that's the hope, I guess, the generations, the new generations. And you're right, if you look at history is more towards, except for the last few decades, but by and large, it is a force towards inclusion.
Yes.
Martin Luther King talked about the moral arc of the universe is long but can bend. And at some level, it's a slow bending that is taking place towards this. So hopefully a beingful organization which at its core is inclusive, strips away the labels, sees people as human beings and perhaps even more as living beings, treats nature as equal coexistence, rights of coexistence, and cares about the society. That, business is a subsystem within society, which is a subsystem within nature. They're tightly coupled, interdependent. That would be, but it'll take many, many decades.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.